I can't be involved in the street life. You're talking about all bad things, and I don't want to be involved in any of that stuff, right? So we went to a club. It was an adult gentleman club, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go, let's go." I was like, "All right, we're gonna go." And the one dude, his name was Skizzy, right? So Skizzy was like, "Yo, that's that Kevin Hart dude." I said, "Oh shit, yeah." Like he was right next to me. He was like, "Yo, go see if he'll want to be in one of our music videos." So I was like, "All right." So I sat down next to Kevin Hart, and this was before Kevin Hart blew up. He was just the guy who was hustling, right? He did a couple of little things here and there, and I said, "Hey, Kevin, I love your work, man. I'm a music manager with these guys behind me, and we're doing a music video. I'd love to see you in it." He was like, "Yeah, yeah, here, let's exchange numbers." So he gave me his number, and then the guys wouldn't leave the streets alone, and so I had to step away. But that was my opportunity in life to work with Kevin Hart
Wow.
before Kevin Hart blew up. But I had to walk away because these guys were, the drugs and the street life, all that stuff. It was just, I was not interested in being near any of that stuff. So that was a great opportunity for me to work with Kevin Hart, get to know Kevin Hart. It didn't happen. And then later, I realized I had a lot of situations like that where I was in communication with people that ended up being pretty big. And it was before I could establish a relationship with them. And so I started thinking about that years later. And I was like, you know what? That, along with the fact that I was a high school dropout, right? I was a go getter, but I didn't know in which direction to run. I had no mentors, no guidance, no nothing. So I didn't have, I didn't have a compass, right? So I was trying to figure out life on my own. And I tried to get these jobs. I realized, the people in corporate make the most money. So I'm trying to get these corporate jobs. And, they would all say the same thing. They would say, well, you don't have a college degree. Now, I had gone and got a GED, and I had some college credits, but there was this one job in particular. It was at Jones Lang LaSalle Real Estate Company. I
Wow.
had my real
Wait,
estate license.
I'm going to ask you to pause right there
Hmm.
because we started recording and we haven't even introduced you. So, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Lenny Bazemore. Hi, V fam. Welcome back. This is our space where culture, creativity, and entrepreneurship collide. I'm your host, Florcy Morisset, and today I am joined by someone who truly, truly embodies what it means to live artfully, build boldly. We're going to talk about all the things he's building and really giving back with intention. Lenny is not the average guy. We already started to hear his stories, and we know where I am, and I've been starting to share that I'm in transition. And it's very interesting because a couple of years ago, when I was living in California, I had my NFT startup. This is maybe actually 3 years ago because I've been at Accenture for
Wow.
3 years. And I was looking to transition back into corporate. And I was like, Lenny, I'm going to be in LA. I don't even know what I was there for. I had a couple of meetings down there. And I said, listen, I just want to chop it up and just come be in your air because you really are a man that pivots, purpose driven, you're passionate, you are a true Renaissance man, right?
Thank
You're
you.
in the art world. You're welcome. You're a real estate mogul, you're an author, you're a philanthropist, you're a tastemaker, and you're someone who really embodies gracefully navigating different spaces in a way that's authentic
Thank
and
you.
loud, right? And I don't
Is
think
it?
we
I don't
always
know if it's loud.
I think it's loud in a
Thank you.
perspective of not being afraid to shrink of being who you are.
Yeah.
I'm 6 foot. When I walk in a room, I'm going to be seen regardless. So I might as well make it look good. So I say from loud from that perspective, not obnoxious.
Beautiful.
You're generous.
Thank you.
So you've been transforming neighborhoods from Philly to creating luxury homes in LA that hopefully we get to
Yeah.
talk about. And so your underscore of how I've been trying to explain to my team is like this gentleman has divinely looked at and rooting everything he did in resilience and in service
Hmm.
to his roots
Hmm.
in Norristown to Philly to art and everything that he's doing. He's being very intentional. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this episode, we're going to talk about everything from building wealth with heart to finding our voice through art. And hopefully, he'll inspire me as I try to figure out the next chapter for Vivant. and choosing the right relationships as you grow. It promises to be raw, real, and inspiring. So whether you're pivoting into a new season, nurturing a creative dream like I am, or just looking to hear a story that reminds you of what is possible, this one is for you. So let's dive in.
Amen. That's
So
well
I'm gonna
said. Well said.
yeah. So listen, so you were telling us a story, and I'd love for you to finish
Um,
that story. Go for it.
yeah, initially, in 2007, 10, 2012, I was a music manager representing 7 artists. We were in a club, met Kevin Hart. He was going to be in one of our videos. This is before he blew up. So my artists, they just wouldn't leave the streets alone. So I couldn't be involved in what they were involved in. So I had to disengage, had to separate and move on from the relationship. So I never got a chance to work with Kevin Hart. But like I said, I had experienced several opportunities like that with people who ended up being somebody like celebrities, but I didn't have a chance to build a relationship with them before they blew up. And so years later, that situation accompanied with, I was a high school dropout, no fault of my own, but it was hard for me to make money and build a life, and I wanted more. I was always going to get out of my small town, right? I was always going to be somewhere else. I always wanted more. But I mean, I just didn't know how to get there because I didn't have role models or mentors or anything. I identified that the corporate world was where it's at because I had a couple of friends working in corporate and they were making bank. So I was like, let me go get a corporate job. So in 2002, I did have my real estate license. And eventually I was like, well, let me just get a job working with one of these big corporate companies. So I went into an interview with Jones Lang LaSalle.
Okay.
In the interview, I crushed it. He was like, "Oh my God, I never met anyone like you." And I was like, "Thank you. Can I have the job?" And he's like, "Oh, but I really, really like you." Ultimately, he didn't give me the job because I didn't have a college degree. As soon as I left that interview, I went and enrolled in business school. I was going to get me a degree because I didn't want someone to tell me that I couldn't have an opportunity because I lacked a piece of paper. That piece of paper had value and I wanted that value. I wanted to be an added value type of person, right? I just didn't want to deal with this for the rest of my life. So at that point, just like the Kevin Hart situation, I said, my God, I don't have what it takes right now. I just don't have the paper. I didn't have the wherewithal to think outside the box and stay in touch with Kevin Hart. I just wasn't, I didn't feel like I was living in a blessed life, right? I had so much happen to me. I had to go through so much adversity that I just felt like, man, like what's going on? And I really started to shift my mindset into, the spiritual realm, right? I started to really have conversations with God just one on one. And I came up with this prayer. Dear God, thank you for blessing me since before I was even born. Please continue to bless me with the wisdom and the clarity of when your blessing is in front of me so I can grab it and do something with it for myself, my family, and others. And ever since I came up with that prayer, my mindset shifted and I started to see opportunities in front of me. And then I had the ability to identify the opportunities and move on them. And so that's how I got to where I am. In part, there's a whole pie. That's one of the pieces.
But I will say, even you recognizing the power of relationships and the
Hmm.
dynamics of the company you keep,
Hmm.
the keys that you need to unlock some of those doors. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that takes a lot of self awareness, which is powerful.
It does. It does. I mean, as a black man in America, I always say, as I say in my book as well, I can change my financial status, but I cannot change the color of my skin. Now, I came up with that because I rented a house in Santa Monica in 2017, my wife and I. We were tired of the Philly cold, and so we wanted to get away for 2.5 months. We rented a house in Santa Monica on the beach. It was amazing. I was out for my daily walk. I walked 7 miles a day, and I was coming up on this intersection, and this lady like clutched her purse, and I was like, I
Are
know
we
she
still
didn't
we
do that.
still do that here? still
yeah,
doing it.
yeah. So I was like, I said, that wasn't, am I overly sensitive? So I was like, all right, look. So I went back like 10, 15 steps and I came up on her again. She did it again. I was like, it's like I drive a Bentley. What you, you know, what I mean? I got more to
Yeah.
lose than you. Your raggedy ass purse. Like I was like, man, like that's crazy. And that's when I came up with the statement. I can change my financial status, but I can't change the color of my skin. As I was walking up, she saw me as a black person who was whatever was in her mind. And she has no idea who I am, what I've been through, what I have, where I live, what I drive. She has no idea that I've been to all seven continents, you know. And, you know, when I go to parties, when I meet people, I have fun with that shit. Right. I walk up to people. Hi, have you ever met anyone who's been to all seven continents? And they're usually like, no. And I say, hi, my name's Lenny Bazemore. It's nice to meet you. You know, but back to that lady, you know, it's, you know, I am who I say I am. I'm not who other people say I am.
Give
The
me a
way it is.
moment. I wanna tell a story for our people. So give me a moment because you've shared a lot already that I feel like I had so many questions on. And I wanted to pause you. So
Interrupt
let
me.
me
Just
kind
let's
of
go.
guide you here for a second. So you're saying that this is a great question. This is one of my first thoughts. You have a lot of different people images and who they think you are.
Hmm.
And for me, you're many things. You know, you're multi hyphenated. And for people that are multi hyphenated, it can be difficult because people don't know what to do with them sometimes. They don't know how to read them. When you're gifted to have the gift to do anything you want, sometimes it's hard to choose the one thing. So, you know, you've been a real estate investor, you're in the art, you're a former gallery owner, you're a philanthropist, you were a board member. I'm not sure if you're still on boards. You're an author, as you shared, you were an artist manager. You know, how did you manage through all of those roles? Did you feel like you needed to balance them all at different times, have like multiple roles and balance them? Or do you feel like they were all distinct chapters along your journey?
Um, I had to balance. I had to learn how to balance. Um, and the only way to do that is focus on your needs, right? So I focused on my needs. I identified what I'm good at. I identified what I wasn't good at. I did more of what I'm good at. Feel like a job or whatever.
Yeah.
I've never felt like anything that I did was a job. I always felt it always derived from a place of passion, right? And curiosity. I wanted to know if I could do this. I wanted to know how. It was like putting a puzzle together, right? And so that's all I did was I strategized and I identified two sentences that are incredibly important. The two sentences are describe what happiness means to you in one sentence and do the same thing for success. People that can, if you walk up to somebody and be like, you know, what does success mean to you? The average person, you know, they start stuttering.
Let me answer. I want to answer. So, what are the two questions? What does success mean? Like, what does happiness look like, and what does success
Yeah,
mean?
in one sentence, describe what happiness means to you.
All right, let me do that first. Means to me where I can live radically
Nope,
free.
nope, nope, nope. I'm gonna stop you right there because I know you. You're not the average person I'm walking up to who's not gonna. No, I want you to think about it for a couple of days and then get back to me.
I've been
Can you do
thinking
that?
about this. No, because I've been thinking
You
about
have been
this.
thinking about it?
Yes, this
All
has
right, then go ahead.
been
Tell me. Tell
Yeah,
me. I want to
this
know.
has been, and so the question for me is how. I know what. For me right now, it is being radically free to do the things that I love, which is art, and
That's what
really
happiness means to you?
right that being radically free doing what I choose to do, living a purpose, passion driven, not doing, to your point, what I'm just good at, which is right now I'm doing sales originations in tech. That's paying the bills. But what would really make me happy, talking about art all day, selling art, traveling the world like I used to, bringing art back. And it doesn't even have to be about selling, but just the idea of conversations around people, right? Because I feel like art is such a powerful medium, but it has changed in this lane. And so the how for me is like the finances. I can't figure that piece out. And so
Okay,
to
so
me, then your second part, wait. So then your second part is what the success look like. Success looks like being financially free and liberated to do all the things that I want and not have those constraints. So go for it.
they're very good. Now let's go back, and each one I want you to form one sentence for each. Happiness means to me this. Success means to me this.
Happiness means living and
I'm
celebrating.
sorry, I'm sorry. Happiness means to me, only to
Happiness,
you.
happiness means to me the ability to talk and work within the arts.
Good. Now success.
Success means that I get to live a purpose driven life within the arts and be financially comfortable and not feast and famine like it sometimes are, right? Like that's the added, but that's what it
So
is.
in 30 days, when I ask you the same question, what does success mean to you in one sentence? And what does happiness mean to you in one sentence? That's what you should say. That's what I should hear,
Okay.
right? It's got to be a daily ritual thing because it's meaningful
Love
to
that.
you, only to you. And what I've identified is when you recite those two sentences like clockwork, what it does is it personalizes your life to a higher degree. When you are, because we're infatuated with social media and who has what and who's doing what. So if you can identify those two sentences, you're looking at other people's stuff and you can't avoid looking at other people's stuff because it's bombarded, right? It's like in our faces. But when you can identify those two sentences and make it personal, and you look onto social media or the world and you see other people with all this amazing stuff, it allows you to genuinely be happy for other people and not be envious.
I love that. So what does happiness and success mean to you right now? What are your two sentences?
For me, happiness means that I'm healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's my happiness. Healthy, wealthy, and wise. Success means to me that, I set a dream, goal, and ambition and I accomplish it, whether small, medium, or large. If I want to lose 5 pounds, boom, I get it done. I'm successful. I count all of the success, right? The little, the pennies, the nickels, the dollars. But for me, it changes a lot because I've reached a certain level where I've grown accustomed to achieving my goals, right? I set a goal, I achieve it. It's very odd.
Yeah.
It's odd.
It's either time over target or throw a bag at it.
Yeah,
So here's a question. So as someone that is accomplished, I love the idea of being able to manifest and be able to be very clear on what it is that you're trying to do. How do you deal with challenges and roadblocks? Is it time? Is it focus? Is it a team? Is it money? Like how do you embrace challenges and break through when you're trying to build an empire?
head on, right? I do not live in a place of pause, right? When you pause, it can
Mhm.
be a good thing, right? Because you can strategize and come up with a really good idea to move forward. I highly recommend that. But for me, I see a problem. All right, boom, let's go. Let's attack it. I'll figure it out along the way. You know what I mean? I used to make a lot of mistakes early on when I'd have a problem. I just had the same mindset. Let me go make a bunch of mistakes. Then I realized, oh my God, mistakes are pretty damn educational. Like they're great.
Yeah, they're fun. I like to fail fast.
Yeah,
And you can monetize your
that's it.
mistakes, right?
Yeah,
You can monetize it, help somebody else not make the same one.
yeah. If they're willing to listen,
Gotta be
if they're
coachable.
willing, yeah. I had to learn that too. I had to learn how to in reference to my wife, right, Teresa. She retired about 7, 8 months ago from being the
Congratulations.
CEO. Thank you. She was the CEO of the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. So she would come home and discuss her problems. And, I'm a man's man. So I want to fix it, babe. I'll help you fix it. Do this, you do this. And she was like, can't you just listen? I was like, I didn't know what to do with that because it's so ingrained in me to want to protect and help my wife, right? So I was like, yes, I can listen. But I walked away from that like, damn, like I'm just trying to help. So I took a therapy session and I said, Dr. Kelly, I have an issue. Teresa came home, wanted to talk about her business. And I immediately, as a man, I just wanted to help her fix it. And she gave me a tool to use. And so Teresa was surprised when I started using this tool. It's kind of cool.
Share it with
Next
us.
time she came home, I was thankful that she did want to have a conversation about her work because she didn't close herself off because of what had happened before. She didn't get the response she wanted before. And she just asked me a simple question. Can't you just listen? Sometimes people have the ability to not want to come back to that person and have a conversation because it just, it's like too much work. So I was, number one, I was very happy that my wife relied on me as a partner and wanted to have a conversation again with me about her business. But she didn't know I had the tools. So she said, babe, this thing happened at work. I said, sweetie, look, but I'm a man. Do you want me to be here for you to listen? Or do you want me to be here for you to listen and then give you some advice? She was like, I just want you to be there for me and listen. I was like, okay, proceed. I blew her mind. She was like, who is my husband?
And active listening is hard for a
It is
lot of
hard. Yeah, yeah.
folks. And so that's a really great tool because sometimes the universe is giving you the answers to a lot of the problems that we're facing in life. And to be able to be with a partner and be able to listen to them and breathe life into them, that says a lot.
Any adversity in life, the first thing I do is I pray for peace, right? Peace of body, peace of mind. I don't want to be the guy who just runs down the hill. I want to run down the hill, but at the necessary speed. I don't want to exert any additional energy if I don't have to, right? Meaning the mind can play tricks on you, and anxiety and stress and depression is all real, right? So when I have to deal with something, I take my time and think it through and I pray on it. I really pray for peace because I don't want to get worried if I don't have to get worried, right? I only have control over so much. So I really just cautiously go forward, but I do go forward. And those mistakes that I make as I got older, I make less mistakes because I've had so much experience and I'm a solution based thinker, right? So I think way before, like, okay, here's step one, step two, step three, step four. If I come across step two, I know to go back to one. Start at one, then I get to two. I look back, see what worked for me on step one and two, then I proceed to step three, right? I'm very calculated in moving forward, but I move forward and I move forward at different paces. So depending on what issue I have, I can knock that shit out quick, or I'll take my time, but I'm moving forward. Head on
Yeah.
a swivel, looking for other avenues, right? Because, you open up door number one, there could be two other doors behind door number one. You just got to be as prepared as possible. And to finish this, I also rely on my wife. My wife is my best friend. She is the one that I trust the most. She knows me more than or better than anyone on this planet. And so she gets me thinking in a different way because she used to be the chief risk officer for a PMI company. And so she graduated Columbia Law. She has a lawyer brain. So she thinks
I
differently.
met Teresa. She's brilliant and she's
Thank you.
kind and all of those amazing things. Continue.
Thank you. So I rely on her heavily. And just as a sidebar, when we first met, Teresa and I, she told me about this art gallery on 2nd Street in Old City.
Which one? There were a lot of galleries on Second Street. I happen to be one of them, but there were a lot of them. Which one
Yeah,
was
the
she
first time
referencing?
first time I met you, I told Teresa your name and I told her about your gallery. She's like, I bought artwork from there. That's what she
You,
said.
I would believe it. I actually thought she looked very familiar, but I did have I was like, do I know her? Do you remember what she bought? Does she remember?
That had to be in 2008, 9,
Yeah, it was early.
right?
That was when I had the Haitian art.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is a perfect transition. Oh my God. So she actually knew me. And this is, Vivant is turned 17 last year or is turning 17 this year. So it's been a while. I want to talk about our connection through art. So when did we meet? We met during my 10th anniversary because I closed in 2014. And then I think I came back a couple of years. I was living in DC at the time. I had just finished grad school. Art was still in storage in Philly.
Hmm.
And I wanted to host a 10th anniversary, couple days of events. And you were so generous and so kind. So, do you remember the story of how we even got connected? I don't even know how I don't know if I knew about you before I even closed, if your gallery was in
I heard
existence
about
before
you before you heard about me. You
okay.
were a beacon. I just got chills right now. I just got chills because you were a beacon amongst the giants in Old City, right? It was like you got to go here. You got to go to this gallery. You got to meet her. It was, I mean, you were a beacon of light, a beacon of hope, a beacon of inspiration. So I knew you. I knew of you before you knew of me.
So it's humbling. Thank you for saying and sharing that. It's humbling to hear that because a lot of people would say they know the brand before meeting me. They would know Vivant or they've heard my name before I would meet them. And I would be so humble because I felt like I was a vessel. I was 26 years old when I opened Vivant Art Gallery, didn't have a business degree, didn't have an arts degree. And I was growing and, did something really special. And I don't think and I can't say I did it alone. Philly like had my back. Where in any city in the world can a 26-year-old own an art gallery in the arts district and be celebrated in the newspaper? Like that's just like
It was
unheard of.
huge.
It was,
Thank you.
yeah. You're welcome. I received
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
And for me, when I came back, I was like, I want to do 3 days of events. I was in grad school at the time. I went to business school because I wanted to figure out how to scale, didn't have a lot of money. And you basically gave me the gallery for free. You were like, this is the taxes. Just here, do what you're going to do. And your gallery was in Manayunk. I'd love for you to share what was your inspiration? Like, first of all, you're an artist. And so were you an artist before the gallery or like tell me
I
about your artist roots? I want to hear that story.
Okay, so I was a working realtor on the main line, and I did this deal on this house that was on the market for 20 years. It had 10 different realtors, and the guy walks into the office. I was doing desk duty. I was on the desk, on a Saturday, and this guy comes in. He's like, "Hey, are you a realtor?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I have a house that's been on the market for 20 years, 10 different realtors, and nobody can sell it." I was like, "I could sell it." And so this guy ended up giving me the listing. This house was on the main line, beautiful flag lot, gorgeous neighborhood, but this house was run down and should have been demolished, right? He wanted to list it for 800. Oh, we did list it for 800 and something thousand. That house should have been torn down. It was gross. Smelled really bad. The gas, the water, none of it was on. And I listed it for what he wanted. It was 800 and something thousand. And I marketed to Europe, right? And so these European doctors, husband and wife doctors, ended up coming to Gladwin and they bought it. And I think they bought it for like just under 800,000. So it was a really good deal that I got him. And at settlement, I had a bottle of Moet Chandon Nectar Imperial Rosé, which is my favorite champagne. And I wanted to celebrate with him because in my eyes, from my perspective, this was monumental. This property had been on the market 20 damn years. 10 different realtors had tried to sell it. He walks into my office and I told him, yeah, I'll sell it. And I did. So champagne, it felt right. And as I walked into the room, he started berating me. And he's like, yeah, I know you were in cahoots with the buyer. You could have got me more money. I said, whoa, 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 buddy, buddy, buddy. What are you talking about? Like, this is a home run deal for you. And I just, at that point, right, because I had built a career in real estate. I was a realtor. I was proud of it. I won awards on the main line. And there might have been another black man as a realtor on the main line. I don't remember seeing one, but I had stiff competition. They're all legacy realtors. They've been there for years. Here I come from the city to the main line, and I thought I did an amazing job. So I had enough. I said, I threw some F bombs out there. Boom. Talking to me like this. What's wrong with you? You this, that, and the third. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to go there. I walked out to the receptionist. I gave her the bottle of champagne and I winked at her and smiled. She was like, she said, good job. And I jumped into my BMW X5 and I went home to my 10,500 square foot mansion in Penn Valley. And I was, right? Because I wasn't at this point. I think Teresa and I were worth, it was about 1.2, 1.3 million, right? So we were close to that.
In
And so
terms of
I was
net worth.
like, yeah. And I was like, I was like, how dare you talk to me like that? You're not going to berate me when I just scored a home run for you. I helped you win the game. So I was sitting there pouting and pouting. And Teresa comes home from work. She's like, what's wrong with you? I said, babe, this guy was berating me. I just sold his house and this, that. She was like, well, what are you going to do now? Because I was like, I'm done with real estate. And she was like, well, what are you going to do now? I said, I'm going back to school. I'm going to be an architect. And she goes, wow, that sounds interesting. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? I said, well, I did the research. I have to go to art school first, and then I have to transfer to Drexel. So when I was a high school dropout through no fault of my own, I ended up getting a GED and enrolling in Montgomery County Community College. And I had about, I don't know, maybe a year's worth of credit, right? Credits. So I said, I don't know, maybe I'll go to community college and then maybe transfer to Drexel. I know they have a brother sister school, right? So it easily transfers over. She goes, oh, that's interesting. I said, what's interesting? She goes, my company just donated some money to the new art barn that they were building. And we have a sculpture in front, and I've been meaning to go up. Do you want to drive up? I said, yeah, let's go. We jumped in the car, we drove up to the community college, and there in front of the art barn was a sculpture from that was donated from her job.
Wow,
I was
look
like,
at God.
yeah, yeah. So I said, well, you know what? Let me see what it's about. So I came up that Monday. I looked at everything. I talked to the a guidance counselor, and they were like, well, you're gonna have to take some, I forget what it's called, but some classes before you can actually, go into your degree. And I said, all right, cool. So I was very focused, and I was crushing it. I was getting A's and B's. It was pretty awesome. And I ended up becoming an art student, right? It took me 3 years to get an associate's degree in fine art, and I did it. And while I was there, some of the professors, I was an adult student, right? So some of the professors were like, hey, how you doing? So we became friends. We go out for drinks and stuff. And they ended up asking me to be on the board. So I said, yeah. So I was a board member of the college that I went to. So when I would go park in the faculty parking lot, which was right behind the art barn, it felt good. And at one point, this professor was like, you can't park there. I said, why not? He's like, aren't you a student? I said, yeah, but I'm also a board member. He's like, oh, have a good day.
Wow,
So,
I didn't know you were an art student at all. I didn't know
yeah.
that part of your story. Okay.
So, long story short, I graduated with honors, Dean's List. And I was up on stage, and it felt great because when I was a high school football star, right, I had scholarships across the country, all Division I schools. So I was a pretty good football player. And this guy started a fight with me my senior year. I tried to walk away. He accosted me, spit on me, hit me, went to hit me again. I ducked, hit him, defending myself. And I ended up getting arrested, expelled from school. I was actually looking at 15 years in prison for assault. That's why I got kicked out of school.
Wow.
I would have been the first person to go to college in my family. I had a full scholarship to play at the University of Pitt and Pittsburgh. And
Yeah.
when that was taken away from me, my life went downhill. But the saddest part of all that is I had to have a conversation with my grandmother. My grandma said, "Baby, I'm very disappointed. I thought you was going to go to college and play that football."
Okay.
I said to her, I said, Mama, don't worry. I'm going to get a college degree. I'm going to be successful. I'm sorry, hold on.
Aw.
So when that dude was in that real estate office and he was berating me when I did something good for him, I was so angry because that was my path to being successful. And it was just like someone got in the way of me trying to fulfill the promise that I made to my grandma. That's how I looked at it. And so I went back to college. I enrolled. I got a degree. I was ready to shop my art around, and the galleries loved my art, and they were willing to give me 50%. And I was like, yo, like, that's crazy. I'm not giving 50% of my work to anybody. Like, that's crazy. And then
No, not someone
I
that
had
could
a
do
light bulb
on his
moment.
own. Not
You
just
know the
someone that
deal.
has
Come on.
mouthpiece that could do on his own. Hell no.
You know the deal. So I said, I got to think this through. So I was like, all right, I got my fine art degree. People like my art. And that light bulb moment went off. Like, I know real estate. So that's at that moment, that's when I was like, you know what? I could buy a little building. I could put my gallery in there. But in order for it to make sense, I would need a mixed use building, apartments above to offset the cost of the gallery. And if I could identify that building, then I can make this work. So I drove all around Philly, Norristown, the main line. I was so tired of driving around. And I was down the city looking at Old City, right? And I was driving back and traffic on 76, Route 76 was so backed up. So I said, you know what? I know a shortcut. There's this cute little town named Manioc. I could cut right through. And that's when I remembered I used to come here when I was a kid, like 21 years old. I used to come here and we used to hang out in the bars. And as I'm driving down, I saw the for sale sign and I parked. And I was like, this is a nice building, right? So on the front of the door, it had Bendy Jewelers. And I identified 3 doors up had the same Bendy Jewelers. So I was like, he must have moved from here to here. So I went in, Bendy Jewelers. I talked to the jeweler, Sammy. I said, Sammy, can you tell me? I said, hi, my name's Lenny. I'm interested in buying a building. Can you tell me about the building? Oh, I used to be there for 11 years before I bought this building in transition. I said, well, is that building for sale? He was like, yeah, let me give you the owner's number. So he gave me the owner's number and I called her and she was an old lady and she was like, huh? I said, listen, I'm interested in buying you. I can't hear you. I said, I'm interested. I can't hear you. So she was hard of hearing. So I hung up and I texted her. Hey, this is Lenny Bazemore. I'm interested in buying your building. She texted me right back. That's how we communicated. And I ended up buying that building for 325,000. Yeah. So I went to the bank, got the loan. I fixed it up, put a extra 100 grand into it. I had 2 apartments above and I had this beautiful gallery. While I was while I was building out the gallery, my wife and I, we took our 2 daughters to China for 3 weeks for vacation. While we were in Beijing, our tour guide had an uncle. It was Wang Yun, a feng shui master. And so I had time to consult with him. And so he told me about color, material, and placement. I brought that home with me. I put it into my gallery. I rearranged some things in my garden, my landscaping, in my home. But the gallery itself was built on a design based on the 5 elements of feng shui. So it was a feel good vibe. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something magical here. That's when I decided to put in a living wall. Remember the flowered wall?
Yes, I
I was
remember.
the
It was beautiful.
first person in Manayunk to bring a flowered living wall. And so I opened up my gallery with my artwork on the walls. And then I felt guilty. I was like, oh my God, like I'm blessed. Like, how in the world could I be so selfish as to sell my work and my work alone? This is this is not how I want to. I took my artwork down. I started meeting all these other artists. I ended up representing Justin Y from Hong Kong, Stephen Bruce from California. I had artists from Italy. I had artists from New York, Miami. I put this collective together and I put it on my walls instead of, I had one little section. I put one piece up. But and then I in 2013 on my daughter's birthday, October 11th, 2013, we opened.
So I, first of all, I love that story. If you will indulge me, I want to tell you my story, which is similar in so many ways. I'm listening, I'm like, oh my God, same here. When I opened, other than being the artist, I opened Vivant. The way I found the gallery, it was one of the maybe second or third spaces that I had seen. First one was in Rittenhouse. It was an old home that had a German designer, had wood panels. I'm like, how are we going to hang art? It was really dark. I was like, this doesn't work. And it was supposed to be a mixed use space. I had told my mom I wanted to get a gallery and I could live upstairs. And she was like, no, you're a woman, you're a young woman, you need to be safe. It was the biggest mistake ever because all my bills were doubled. And I regret that to this day. Like, I think I would have had more longevity or I would have thought very different around monetizing the space or offsetting the cost a bit. But nonetheless, she was like, get a separate space. Safety is important. So I did that. And at the time, I was an avid golfer. I went to Lay's PGA school. I used to golf with a pro maybe about 2 or 3 times a week. And I had went golfing and I went to Old City and I had never been to a First Friday, mind you. Never been
No?
to a First Friday, ever. I had been living in Philly maybe a year, 2 years before I decided to open Vivant. And I was a transplant. I was from New York City originally. My ex was in the military. That was a little situation, but he helped me kind of start the gallery. I always give him credit for kind of supporting me in some spaces. But nonetheless, I'm walking and I see there was an alleyway where there was a coffee and I see a space and I was like, but it was an alleyway, it was for rent. And, I call and they're like, oh, are you standing there with the white hat? And I was like, yeah, because I had a white hat, I had like polo shirt, shorts, avid golfer, golfing attire. And I was like, yeah, this is me. So they come, they talk to me. They were having coffee in a little cafe. And they're like, oh, this space is great. But there's a better one around the corner. And I had actually been to that space. It was one of the first spaces that had scaffolding outside, and it was dark. It was dingy looking. There was this big wall. Like the space was like cut in half. Like I guess the artist had lived in the back, or it was a studio space. It was just like I didn't see anything. I was like, I think I saw that space. Like, no, you got to go see it again. You know, I promise you, it was this older Jewish woman. And she was like, you got to see it again. I promise you that this is the perfect space for you. So literally, she was like, all right, I'll get the keys, come back, you know, tomorrow, the next day. I go back, I walk in the space, and it was like, it was so beautiful.
What changed? What changed?
I think what changed, first of all, it just maybe was the timing, and for her to start seeing that it was the perfect space, and me seeing two other spaces and realizing in contrast, it was better than what I was seeing. But another little piece of that story is I started wanting to be a Haitian art gallery, and I only showed Haitian art. And within the first 2 to 3 months, I was like, there's so much underrepresented art. I have to show more Black art. And so your story, there's a lot of similarities around trying to one, find space. And like, I thought I was going to go be a gallerist. And I'm like, they're not giving me a chance. I'm going to go build my own. I can do this. Right. And having that entrepreneurial spirit, but then being a little bit sacrificial and thinking, what is the bigger story that I wanted to tell? So I share that with you. What is your take? You have an amazing collection. So I'd love to hear about your art collection, but I want to really talk about what is your take on the Black art scene right now? Like, you know, there are a great maybe 50 top Black artists that are the usual suspects in the usual collections and museums. You know, what's your perspective? I mean, it's a big conversation and we can go anywhere you like
Yeah,
with
I
it.
mean, there's so many, you know, directions this topic can take. I'll try to be succinct. So, you know, Danny Simmons,
Our
right?
good brother.
We had
Our
the
good
event,
brother.
right?
Our
We
good
had the
brother.
event, and I want you to talk about the event. We'll go back and talk about the event at my gallery because that was a phenomenal. The auction was amazing. I really enjoyed watching
Remember we
you
were
do your
battling?
thing.
We were battling. I
Yeah,
ended up getting another piece similar to it, but I should have got that one piece. I'll show, I might even go show it, but I ended up the piece that we were battling. And no, it wasn't. So you got a piece. There was someone else I was trying to bid out for a piece that I
yeah.
ended up
I got a couple
bidding.
of pieces.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you wasn't playing. But
Yeah.
me and you got into a battle piece, and I was like, oh, why are you doing this to me? But this is why you battle for the piece, because even if you get a piece replicated, it's not the same. Like I had a piece that Nataki Bati she made, and it wasn't, you know, she ended up recreating it much bigger, but it didn't have the same je ne sais quoi. But yeah, continue. Take your time. Go ahead. Tell me
Yeah, I
what
definitely
your
want to
thoughts
come
are.
back to that event. You know, Danny came to Philly and you know, he stopped by my gallery and he was like, "Yo, man, I want a show." I said, "Yeah, I'll give you a show. You know, you're Danny Simmons, man. You know, brother with Run, Joey, and brother with Russell. Man, you come from, you know, you come from legacy, man. You come from royalty. Yeah, I'll give you a show, of course." And so we became tight friends, like instantly. I went to his studio and he wanted to show me his artwork. His home is phenomenal. His African art collection is like some of the best I've ever seen. And I'm walking through, we get to a studio and I see this one piece. I'm like, my jaw dropped. I said, I want that. He's like, what you mean you want it? I said, it's not the first time you heard somebody say they want your shit. Like, I want that. He's like, well, that's
Like,
going,
you know
yeah.
what
He said, that's, you know what I mean? He said, that's the cornerstone of my show. I said, yeah, I'll buy it now. It could be in the show, but we'll put a little red dot on it just to incentivize people that, you know, they can't have that one, so they better get another one. He was like, oh, I like the way you think. So we did a show for him. We got tight. He ended up asking me if I wanted to be on his board, right, for his nonprofit. Him and his brothers started a nonprofit 30 years ago. And I said yes. And I'm telling you right now, the parties in the Hamptons we used to go to are incredible. They were incredible. So I've been on the board for, it's been about 8 years now. So another board member was Kahinde, right? Wiley,
Actually,
right?
can't see that's the kind of Wally piece right there. This is part of the
Yeah.
Rush Arts box set.
Yes, you got
But
it. So
this is the 20th year, 20th or 25th year. I'm not sure. Maybe
probably,
20th year.
yeah.
20th is the 20th. Go ahead.
So I was on the board with Kahinde before he blew up.
So,
And so I was like, that man is going to do some marvelous things. So when you ask me that question, I immediately go to a broader community, right? So I believe that just like Kahinde, Black artists today should market their work in all of the world, right? Spain, London, not just be, community based, right? You put something together, email marketing, just go to Ireland, right? That's what I believe Black artists should do right now. Go to Ireland, Scotland, Africa,
Germany.
Italy, right? This is
That would
something
be
that they should do.
that would be completely flipping it on its head. My next question was going to be around, do you believe people are still buying art? There was a big some statistics that came out recently about art fairs decreasing their value. This the lowest in the last 20 years in terms of market art sales market declining. And
Mhm.
so I was going to say, are people still buying art? But the reality is maybe not in America. And, maybe you just need to think more broadly. What is your
That's it.
perspective around selling art and like buying art, like even the art sales from a gallery perspective? Like, what are you seeing? Are you still buying art?
I First of all, people buy from people they like, right? So a lot of times artists, they don't want to be in the spotlight. They want to be in the back and just present their art from somebody else's perspective. I just want to create the art. I don't want to deal with, So I think I think it's very, very important for artists to a lot of them are like me. I'm 50% extrovert, 50% introvert. I don't really like crowds. I don't like going to parties. But when I do go, I end up being the life of the party most times because I'm so interesting. 7 continents. I'm from Norristown, born and raised. Now I live in the Hollywood Hills. I've had dinner with Prince Edward. I mean, all kinds of shit. I've got all these. I've had lunch in Slovakia once. I mean, it's crazy, right? So I'm
You got stories
interesting.
to tell. Yeah.
I'm interesting, but I can't wait to get home. And so I'm interesting at parties naturally because it's a response to me being, I think, more of an introvert than anything. So I come across as an extrovert, but it's a response, right? It's a nervous response. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, I can't wait to go. So I think artists need to get out of their comfort zone and actually, go out and network and be a cheerleader for their own art and interact with people, letting people get to know them. But before they do that, they have to identify who they are. They have to identify the story that they want to tell, right? And then hope it resonates with a potential client, right? A customer or a collector who will go with them on a journey. People want to buy art. Art fairs are funny because they sensationalize the bullshit. And you buy a banana on a wall with duct tape for $6 million. That is off-putting. They art fairs will do well when they get back to the foundation of why they do it. It's not the $6 million for a freaking banana. It's the hard-working, rooted, deep-rooted artist who believes in their work, and then they find patrons that want to support that journey. Because when you buy art, you're not just buying a thing to hang on your wall. You're buying that artist more time to do what they love, which is contribute to the world.
Say loud for the folks in the back. I think one of the things that's like ringing true in the conversation we're having is that you approach and think about business very differently than a lot of people. And a lot of artists, they want to just paint. And I feel like art schools have done a disservice to a lot
A hundred
of
percent.
artists. They teach them how to paint, but they don't teach them how to thrive in the art business. And that
Yeah.
moniker of poor artists is true and rings true because they don't have the mindset
I'm
to be
surprised you haven't
entrepreneur.
formed a business model to deal with that. Because
I started
I
to.
think you crush that.
I started to. So part of like Vivant. So first of all, my business model for Vivant was I would actually travel outside of the country because I wanted to think about art differently. I didn't want to consign the art for 30 days, market it in hopes of it selling, and then the artist takes it back, or, and maybe I had a lot of trust issues. I'm like, well, why would they buy it from me if they can go get it from the artist? And, I've had artists burn me in that way. And so, but I started from the day one, traveling the world, buying art out of the countries, uncharted territories, bringing it back, cleaning it, framing it, repositioning, telling the story of the artist, the country, and the canvas itself, and really being able to create margin and really create a price point for art that was accessible to everyone. But to your point, I wanted to start your earlier point, like I was like, I can't just do Mexican, Cuban, Middle Eastern. Like I wanted to start showing local Black American women artists. And so I asked the artists and I positioned it to them like, let's put skin in the game. And I would either rent out the gallery, do the marketing for them, take a lower percentage, or like, hey, you could have all of the percentage, because I wanted to build their business acumen. So I used to do that back in the day. But I think digital media at the time, not even the digital, like websites, if you think about it, 2010, 12, 14 was such a big thing. And I too had some sales overseas, but I couldn't figure out how to crack the algorithm at the time. I would say the words I was using is I couldn't transact online. And that's what drove me to close the gallery and go to business school. I was doing well, 15% growth year over year, but my art sales were going down while my consulting work was going up. And I was like, well, why are they only calling me to do the pop-up event, or, they're not calling me to do the strategy? It's because I don't have a business degree. And me, similar to you, you ain't gonna tell me I can't walk in this door. So I was like, let me go get the paperwork and let me go, and then I'll come back to the art world. I didn't. I went into big tech, but it was this idea that I forget where I was going with this, but I do feel like a lot of artists don't want to be in that space. I tried that, but no, this was the point that I was making. The point that I wanted to make is now digital media has forced artists to be their own promoters and advertisers. And I feel like for at least the Black community that is used, or the Black artists and creatives, used to having to do more regardless than the regular artists and the average artist, because if we're gonna show up, we gotta show up 10 toes down, attire, presentation, energy. We gotta promote the event in hopes that they could sell their art. Some of them are flourishing. I do feel like there are still a lot of artists that are in galleries. They've commercialized their art because they can't sell maybe some of the big ticket art, paintings. They're not selling as fast as they could. I see a lot of commercial deals now where you're seeing like basketballs, like High Andy Wiley had the series around basketballs and scarves and merch.
Yeah.
And you're seeing them like in the museum stores. And so those are the trends that I'm seeing. One trend I don't like, and I'd love to hear your perspective, is the selling posters on printed canvases, open edition work, making it feel like it's real original art. And it's like I have it. I like the art that's accessible, but I don't like the fact that it's become commercialized to the point that it's not even valuable. It's not original, and we're not really supporting many artists. But what's your perspective?
I mean, I agree with you 100%. I feel like the margins are always going to be there, right? Because the artists, they hardly ever take into account the time they make, the time it takes to make the art. That has a dollar amount associated with it. Your time is money. So I think artists, they finish a piece and I finished a piece. I'm going to put it at this price point. But it took time to make it. It took material to make it. All this time and material has a number associated with it. So are they pricing the artwork correctly? That's number one. Number two, they don't want to deal with the people, right? Some of them don't want to deal with the people. They
Yeah.
want someone else to sell it. Well, that's fine, but that someone else who sells it is going to have to, they're going to have to get a commission. And so, with that being said, number three, artists would do in this economic environment, artists would do themselves justice to create the work and try to sell it themselves to keep more of the money, because the more money you make, the more money you have, and it stretches out. If you're giving 50% to someone like me, who I'm willing to take the 50% because I did the work to sell it, it just doesn't do the art justice. I think artists need to be more self-sufficient and take the reins, of their career
Yep.
and market in Europe, do the things like, scarves and stuff like that. I don't really like that stuff because I think it I'm not going to say, I don't mean it any kind of way, but the best word to use is cheapen, right? It cheapens the brand, but I also really like the boots that I wore last night. I got these Doc Martin boots that are Jean-Michel Basquiat Doc Martin boots.
But that's different. But that's the fashion.
But it's
There
still,
is a level. There's a
just,
level
I
of
think artists have to be
collectability.
careful with how they put, where they put their art on the merchandise, right? It's got to be done at a high level to maintain the brand, status. But I think artists really need to start taking their business and their careers and driving them, and not relying on dealers and art owners and people
I
that want
agree.
to curate
I do agree with you 100% that they need to be it for the long term. Like
yeah,
if you don't have the relationship with the collector and you have to always go through a gatekeeper, you're going to minimize your future growth, period. And art is very personal. I do feel like I, to a point, sometimes question, what is the use of a middleman? And that's why I'm questioning, like, what is the future of this? And it takes a right mindset, and it takes you being uncomfortable and stretching yourself. Because if you're not with the people, how can you be creating for the people? Even if you're creating for yourself, how can you be creating art, for people that they're going to put this in their home if you don't like them and want to talk to them? People are like, I don't want to talk to artists. I don't want to talk to the collector. They let them figure out what it means. And I'm like, but you want them to spend thousands of dollars and put this piece in your home, but you don't want to explain it. You don't want to engage with them. Like, how dare you? Sometimes I get a little bit, how dare you?
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think there is
yeah.
a mindset shift.
Think I think you nailed that statement. You nailed it, because artists, when they're in their own little world, they're creating their reality, right? And, I believe that the mysteriousness behind the art, right? Because it's all subjective, right? So I'm left brain, right brain, right? I think most artists don't have that ability. They don't have, and this may be one of the reasons why the art schools don't teach how to business and how to market and sell your work, because artists are a certain, I think it's left brain.
Yeah, that's the
They know how
creative
to,
side of the
yeah,
left.
yeah, they have to create, they create the work, but they don't know how to do the business side of the work. And so I think that's why, and they're so good at creating the work, I think that's why business schools don't teach it, because they have identified that the artists won't get it, and they need to have someone else sell it for them. It's unfortunate. What I I gave someone advice. They said, Lenny, I just can't do the business. I don't numbers. I don't do numbers. I can paint numbers, but I don't do numbers. Okay. I said, okay, well, you're talking to someone who identifies with you, but I'm also a businessman. So I get it. I force myself to learn, right? And then I go back with ease. If you're open to advice, I'd like to give you this advice: be the artist that you want to be, but tap into corporate in a way that you haven't thought of. And if you have thought of it, let me know. You're an artist, you want to be in the studio, you want to push out work. So then what's stopping you, since you are your own business? Every artist is an entrepreneur. I don't think they always see themselves as entrepreneurs, but they are. They're running a business. So tap in all of the vast art schools in your area. Tap into the intern process. Bring in some interns. Bring in an art intern. Bring in a marketing intern. These are interns that are looking for the experience, and you don't really have to pay them. Now, if you sell a work based on the work that they did by marketing or helping you with that, then you can give them a percentage as a bonus,
Yep.
right? But tap into all aspects of business as an entrepreneur, as an artist. And I gave them that advice, and they took it and ran with it, and they had success with it.
I love that. I love that. Question. How is the art scene different from Philly versus like LA? Because I feel like in
Lord.
Philly, these are the words, the number one statement around why they cannot buy art is I don't have walls, I don't have enough space, or I don't own my home yet. And I'm waiting. Those are the biggest retorts to why they didn't want to buy art. But what is that like in LA? Like, is it different? I know you're not selling art per se, but what do your friends say around
Well,
when they're buying and collecting art?
well, LA is a true international city, right? So I live off Sunset. You go down, there's a hotel down there that has this artist that I think he's from England, right? It's ridiculous. His artwork is ridiculous. And I happened to be in London 2 years ago, and I think it's James Parse or Purse or something like that. And Teresa and I are walking through. I want to get to the. It's a Sunday. I'm pretty sure the Bentley dealership is closed, but I wanted to get me a Bentley baseball hat, right? And we're walking through this park from the hotel. We stayed at the Dorchester. We stayed. Oh, this is crazy.
Okay. All
So
right, tell me stories. We want to
we
hear the
stayed
stories.
we stayed at the Dorchester in the penthouse, and Lenny Kravitz stayed there the week before. And I felt like, yes, like I've arrived, man. We had the butler and everything, right? So it was a Friday. I got a text message from a friend of mine in LA. He was like, "Hey Lenny, I'm going to an art event. Are you around?" I said, "No, I'm in London." He was like, "My girlfriend Allie is in London, and we love Allie." So Teresa and I said, "Send Allie's information. We'll invite her over." And so we text Allie, "Hey Allie, you got to come over and have the Queen's tea with us. You know, the champagne, the little finger sandwiches, and the desserts and all that." And she was like, "Oh my God, would love to. I'm actually in London visiting a college friend. Can I bring her too?" Said, "Absolutely." So that was Friday. So we scheduled the Queen's tea on Saturday. And I'm on social media, and I see an artist that I represented. It's a finger painter named Justin Y out of Hong Kong. I flew him in, gave him his first show at the gallery. The car dealership, the Audi car dealership up in Conshohocken, heard that I was bringing him in. They invited him up to hand paint or finger paint a brand new Audi. And it was this whole thing. And Justin Y, I bought one of his pieces. It was 4,500. As the gallery owner, I get 50% off. So I paid 2750 for this piece. And again, it was 4,500. Justin Y has a stellar show. He flies back to Hong Kong. He ends up blowing up. So the piece that I paid 4,500 for at that time, a few years later, he was selling that same piece for 45,000. So, with that being said, I'm on social media and I noticed that he's in Paris. Now, I'm in London. I noticed he was in Paris. I was headed to Paris after London. So I was like, "Yo, Justin, what's up, man? I see you're in Paris. I'm going to be in Paris in like a few days." He was like, "I was in Paris. I'm now in London." And I haven't seen him for 10 years. Teresa and I love him. His birthday's like the day after mine, right? We're both Pisces. And I said, "Yo, no shit. I'm in London now." He's like, "Oh my God, where are you?" I said, "I'm at the Dorchester." He was like, "Oh my God, I'd love to see you." I said, "Can you come to the Queen's Tea tomorrow?" He said yes. So we had this butler like bring in the finest champagne and all the finger sandwiches, and it was just we're in a penthouse in London at the Dorchester, and I'm with Allie, Teresa, Allie's college friend, and Justin Y, who we just love. And it was an amazing time. So, with that being said, I think that back to the beginning, relationships are very important to build on. You got to build on relationships.
Yeah.
And I honestly forget your question because I'm
It doesn't even matter the
I'm
question.
talking.
I had to remember the question myself. I was like, what? Wait, what was the question I asked? Because the story was much better than the
Yeah,
question.
I got stories, man. I got
Yeah.
stories.
Listen, I we could do this all day and I want to. So we have time. The question was around, is it better to buy like what's the art experience in, Philly versus LA? But it
There
sounds
you
like
go.
London was better.
Yeah, yeah. So LA is wild, man, because you know, you this This is the design capital of the world. 10 minutes away in my car, I get in my car, it's probably about 5 minutes away, is the design centers, right?
Yeah.
It all happens there and then branches out to New York and the rest of the world. It's ridiculous the amount of art and culture here. It's beyond anything I've ever seen. And it's electric. I think the frequency here on this side of the country is it's a different vibration. You know, you hear
Yeah.
people talk about frequency and energy. That shit is real.
It's real. I
It's
loved
real.
LA. I really did. And I think there's interesting circles. I want to talk about your transition from moving from Philly, East Coast, to even West Coast. Like just a different mindset. The vibration, to your point, the way you think about health and sunlight and energy, and there's space, there's trees. I mean, there is a different mindset that comes with that. What was the biggest mindset shift for you from the East Coast to the
Oh,
West Coast?
okay. So I got stories. All right. Let me start with this. We're in Philly. It's in the middle of winter. American Express reaches out to us. Hey, we have Stevie Wonder one night only in New York. We were like, yes, we cannot miss that. We caught the train up, saw the best show ever, came back, came to the house, freezing cold, cold to the bone cold. And so I literally had to take a hot shower just to warm up. And this is how, when I tell this story, I always say this is how I know my wife loves me. When I came out of the shower, I came downstairs. She had a really nice glass of Bordeaux wine, red wine, waiting for me on a counter. I gave her a kiss, took my glass of wine, went over by the fireplace, sat down on the couch. I said, babe, I don't want to spend another winter in Philly. It's too cold. She goes, I agree. Where do you want to go? Anywhere but Florida, she said, because of the humidity in the winter, summer, spring. It's horrible. So I said, all right. She goes, I'll reach out to Bobby. Her cousin Bobby lives in Pasadena. Bobby recommended that we rent a house in Santa Monica. So we did on the beach. While we were there for 2.5 months, hey babe, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. Hey, I got an idea. How about the TV show, $1 Million Listing? How about we go to open houses on Sundays? We'll eat the hors d'oeuvres, drink their champagne, meet some new people, and be like, peace. That's what we did for 2.5 months. It became a pastime. We look forward to it. Well, one of the houses that we walked into, the ninth house that we walked into, this guy pops up. He's like, hey, what's up? How you doing, bud? Said, hey, bud, how you doing? Well, feel free, walk around. We walk through the front door, and in the back window, picture perfect, smack dab in the middle, is a view of all of LA downtown. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. I ain't never seen nothing like this before. Teresa walks out to the balcony. She's like, and I walk out. She goes, this is beautiful. And we walk in. The guy's like, go upstairs, go upstairs. Teresa goes upstairs. He's like, hey, what's your budget? Teresa and I, we have a 3,000 square foot house on the main, on the shore of the Miles River in St. Michael's, Maryland, next to the Inner Perry Cabin. Beautiful townhouses, series of 50 townhouses. So we owned that for a couple of years. We had this 10,500 square foot mansion on the main line that we got for 50% off because I'm a realtor. I was a real estate guy. So we're living good. We got 2 houses. We have a life. Teresa and I always wanted to retire in San Francisco. That was our dream.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
now we're
Okay.
here in this house and we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. So the guy's asking me my budget, and we didn't really have a budget because we just didn't really discuss moving and buying a house in LA ever. So I was like, I was just being a big shot. I was like, oh yeah, under 5 million. I That was bullshit. I was kidding. I was not really serious at all. So Teresa's like, babe, you got to come see this. So I go upstairs, and every level is the same view. It's beautiful, vast, vast view. Downtown, sunset, Capitol Records, all of it, the mountains.
Yeah.
And the realtor says, hey, don't forget about the rooftop. We're like, rooftop?
I know. Listen,
What's that?
I can attest, everyone. It is real. It is beautiful. I've been in his home. It is gorgeous. If you get the reflection in the back is the city. This is what you're looking
Right?
at. Yeah,
So you
it is
get you know.
beautiful.
So we go up to the rooftop. We're blown away. We're coming down. The guy's like, the only reason the open house was over at 3 o'clock. The only reason I'm here is because the people that put in the offer and it was accepted want to come back and see it. So they're going to be here at 4 o'clock. And so I was like, my God, they scored. The house was on the market for a week at $5.6 million. We were not interested in buying this house. Someone had already put in an offer. It was accepted for $4.8 million. So as we're coming down the steps, they came in. I was like, yo, we want this fucking house anyway. Congratulations. And then Teresa and I leave, and we were like, wait a minute, that house, like, it was calling us. So at the end of the day, we went to get coffee. We're driving around the hills, looking at all these beautiful houses. And I came up with this idea of, you know what? Let's put in a backup offer. And we were just kidding. We were not serious. And so I called the realtor, and it was Jason Oppenheim from Selling Sunset,
Really?
right?
Okay. You were
At
on
that
one of the
time,
shows too, right? Did you
I'm
go
on
on one?
season 4, episode 4 of Selling Sunset. Yeah. So he said, can I represent you? We said, yeah. He put the offer in, and the Eagles were in the Super Bowl in 2017 to the beginning of 2018 they were playing against the Patriots and Tom Brady. And we had people over our house in Santa Monica, and we had a Super Bowl party. And as the last person left, Teresa shut the door. My phone rings, and it's Jason Oppenheim. And he knows we're from Philly. And he's like, yo, man, congratulations. I said, yo, fuck that. I'm a Raiders fan, man. You know, I root for the Eagles because I'm from Philly, but I'm a Raiders fan. He was like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm a Raiders fan, not an Eagles fan. And they just won the Super Bowl. He was like, no, dude, you got the house, man. You got the house. We put in a backup offer. First offer fell through. We were immediately put in first place. We had to act fast because behind us was another offer for 300,000 more. So the next day we wired all this money, we filled out all this paperwork, this, that, and the third. We ended up buying this house for $4.8 million in cash.
Beautiful.
That's insane. We did not know we could afford it. One of the things that I definitely want to touch base on with you is how important it is to have a financial advisor. Remember when that realtor situation when I sold that guy's house, and he was berating me, and I was like, yo, I'm out. And I told you I went back to my mansion that I got for 50% off, right? Bought it 75% done. We finished it, and the value of it went up. So that helped us reach millionaire status. We had about $600,000 in equity, real estate equity. That, along with some investments that we made early on, we were looking at that time, 2014, we were worth about 1.2 million. I went to middle school and high school with a guy named Larry Gilston. We remained friends after high school. He ended up being a financial advisor for Lenfest, a family office, a billionaire
Yep.
family office.
In
They ended
Philadelphia
up
for folks.
merging. Huh?
I was saying for folks that are listening, Lenfest is
Yeah.
based in Philadelphia.
It's billionaire shit, right? Billionaire private office, a private financial advisor manages the billionaire family's money. So you heard of Forbes magazine and, Forbes, right? Everyone's heard of Forbes.
Yeah.
Forbes family are billionaires. They had a family office as well. They had financial advisors managing their private family money, right? So the Lenfest family of billionaires and the Forbes family of billionaires merged to form Forbes Family Trust. These are wealth advisors that manage billions of dollars. Well, my friend Larry Gilson went to work for them as a director. We'd shoot the shit, we'd go to karaoke in Chinatown. And one day he was like, hey, what are you and your wife worth? I said, maybe 1.2 million. He was like, do you mind if I take a look at your portfolio? I may be able to help you. I said, not a problem. So he came over to the house, met with me and Teresa, brought the president of the company. They brought a really nice bottle of Camus and Cabernet Sauvignon. And we popped the bottle. We're toasting to life. And we showed them all we have. And they said, you only have about 1.2, 1.3 million. But we want you to know that we do not take on clients that are less than $5 million. We take on 1 to 2 clients a year. And the fact that you went to middle school and high school with Larry Gilston and you remain friends with him, we will take you on as a client. We're Black folk. We barely got $1 million.
That part.
And they took us on as clients. We've been clients since it's been almost 12 years, right? I told you the house that we live in, we bought in 2018 for 4.8 million in cash. It's very important to have a financial advisor guide you. Strategy. When you're just starting out, you're younger, most likely you have a high risk tolerance. They will put you in vehicles that have high risk but have high reward. And as you make more money, you want to safeguard that money. That high risk becomes middle risk. Now you're really rocking and rolling. You're taking some really good chances here. You're making as much money as possible here with their advice. And then when you get the money and you're comfortable and you hit all your marks, you go to a low risk, right? You go to a low risk, you stay right here. Now, Teresa and I started high, then we went moderate. Now we're low risk. We don't risk much. We just let the money generate because money makes money faster than people make money. So the important thing is for us, we didn't want to be in any investment vehicles that are involved in supplying any materials for war or child labor. These are the two things that we just will not invest in. We don't invest on our own unless it's like an angel investment opportunity, which we have a bunch of them. But we let our financial advisors manage our money because we don't have proprietary software that can kind of go with the market and read the market and get out of a vehicle, put it in it, you know what I mean? Safeguard the dough. So let me just say, having a financial advisor at any level, at any start, whether you have 100,000, 20,000, 5,000, you have to have a professional help you reach your financial goals.
Yeah. And you got to save. And I know people say saving doesn't make millionaires, investing does, but we have to have a mindset around how we're spending money.
Yes.
And a lot of us are consumers, and they talk about the percentage in terms of how long the Black dollar stays in the Black community, which is
That's
ours
horrible.
versus, and I think there's a lot that's happening socially and politically right now and is changing people's perspective economically on how and where they spend their dollars. What's your perspective on wealth, the wealthy, and politics, and the folks that actually seemingly have, like, I'm giving you a little bit of my perspective, but the folks that seemingly have the most want to do the least, and there's no sense of responsibility, like they're trying to take it out of the arts community, trying to take it out of schools, like where they're pulling it from. You're like that's not where the savings are. Savings is in the war, the military funding, and things of that nature. But like, what's your perspective, like how, from a wealthy person that is, has legacy, how are you thinking about what's happening, and like how are you defining what's happening? What's the conversation like?
A great question. Sad that you have to ask it. The problem is it's in multitudes, right? Black folk like us, we have to identify where we want to be, right? We got to start with self, right? I identified where I wanted to be. When I was a kid, I was 7, 8 years old. I was saying at that time, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be a millionaire. I think back to that all the time. I had no guidance. I had no one tell me there were other options, right? There were other alternatives in the way that I think. I always said, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. What if someone would have said, Lenny, why don't you want to be a multimillionaire? I had no idea a multimillionaire. A millionaire, right? I want to be a millionaire. Knowing what I know now, I want to be a multimillionaire. A multimillionaire, why not a billionaire? Right? So limited thinking, right? Thinking or a limited belief system is what Black communities are born with because we had no one, the majority of us had no one to teach us. So we are winging it. We're doing a good job of winging it, but as Black folk, we are winging it. We didn't have mom and dad who were financially literate teach us these fundamental principles based on financial literacy, and it's all building blocks like math. You get this, you do this, you do this, you invest. I tell people Lifeline. Lifeline is right here. You could have a good life right here as long as you don't have debt. When you have debt, that means an interest payment of, let's say, 7% is going to the bank. Lifeline, debt, 7% compounded, going to the bank. The way to offset that, Lifeline, investments gaining 7% going to you. So you can have a lifeline, have no debt, have no investments, and be fine. Where you start to really succeed and have financial freedom is when you minimize the debt and increase the investments. 7% debt, interest payment, 7% profit,
And
gaining
that's 7%
interest.
if you're lucky, right? A lot of people are paying 18, 20%.
You can a financial advisor will guide you and get the most for you, because the more they make you, the more they make. So right here is lifeline. Keep this to a minimum, keep this to a maximum, because 7% down or 7% up, they both do compound interest. They both compound. Right? So black folk need to understand you need to have a solid foundation on financial literacy. Start from there and build on it. And then branch out and teach, right? We have to each one teach one is a real thing, you know. Support black businesses, support black services as much as possible.
I have a controversial question. Do you think what's happening politically is race driven or class driven?
Well,
As someone that is black and wealthy and probably very few in your circle.
yeah. Well, Ava DuVernay, right? Amazing director. I met her once. At, I was, through Rush, right? I was a board member. So I got him, Tangi invited me to, do you know Tangi?
No, I never met
Yeah,
her.
she was amazing. She invited me, and Russell and Danny invited me to, in 2017, before I moved to LA, they invited me to Russell's party. We were honoring Lin-Manuel Miranda and his miraculous rise to fame. You know, I seen Hamilton 6 times. And so
Not
we
seen it
wanted
yet.
to,
I'm
yeah, we
embarrassed.
wanted to like cheer for him and champion him. So his career is amazing, and we wanted to just have an evening with him. So I, as a board member, I got invited to this amazing event. I'm up in the Hollywood Hills, party at Russell Simmons' house, and we're honoring Lin-Manuel Miranda. I had my daughter with me. I had my wife Teresa with me. I'm like, my God, this is it. My daughter said, Dad, is that Kobe? I said, yeah, that's Kobe. You want to meet him? She goes, my God, Dad, yeah. So I said, come on, let's go. We walk over to Kobe. I said, hey, Kobe, how you doing? My name's Lenny. This is my daughter, Alexis. She goes to Harriton. He was like, Harriton? Man, what? Why don't you go to Lower Merion? Right? They're right down the street from each other. I said, yeah, we live in your old neighborhood when you went to Lower Merion. He was like, yo, what's up? How you doing? I said, yo, she wants to take a picture with you. She goes, can we do Snapchat? He's like, what's that? So my daughter, Alexis, taught Kobe Bryant how to do Snapchat and what it was. That was fun. That was fun. And so that was amazing. And behind him was his wife, Vanessa. We had a chance to meet her, talk to her. Sweetest thing in the world. Behind her was Ava. Am I saying that right? Ava DuVernay?
Yeah, Ava DuVernay. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it.
So, and we had a chance to say hi to her, talk to her, and a bunch of other celebrities. It was wild. But I love her work. And the work that she did with Origins, the movie Origins, was solid, and it made it make sense. So to answer your question, I believe it's both. I believe it's race, and I believe it's financial, right? Because I've been in banquet halls in San Francisco when Steve Young had transitioned from NFL quarterback to financial advisor. Teresa and I were in the room full of white people. We were the only people of color, and we were the only non-millionaires. It did not feel like any racial stuff was going on. Like nobody looked at me any kind of way. I felt like they wanted me to be there. Like, congratulations. Because if we were not in the room, there were no other brothers and sisters in the room. So what we learned there was, it was monumental. You got to be in the room. So I do believe that there are levels to it. I believe that when in America, when you start messing with white people's money, they start to really start paying attention, right? And it becomes less about race. It becomes about the money, because they believe in, generational wealth and handing down. The other side of it is, yes, it's race because they don't want an influx of people of color coming in, rising up in population, minimizing their population, because that equals or could, be looked at as there are less opportunities that are going to be there for my people. So, yeah, I do believe it's both.
That's a tricky question. It was a tricky one.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to detangle which one. And I'm of the belief, I have it tatted on my back, Luke 12, chapter 14, too much is given, much is required. And so I'm always challenged of what is the responsibility of those that are able and willing, and what is the responsibility of the wealthy, especially in times like this, right? Like, how should they be conducting themselves?
Absolutely.
Do you hold a lot of money within your art collection, like as an asset? Do you use art investing as an asset class?
I do not. I do not. I view art because I come from a unique background. I view art as every time I buy a piece, I buy it because I like it. Sometimes I absolutely have to have it. I love it. And consequently, it helps the artist do their art another day, another week. So I love buying because I know what it means to the artist. It means they're going to be able to continue contributing to the world in which God has blessed them this talent to do. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, if you're lucky, right? If you're lucky, you'll buy a piece and that piece will go up in value. But I hang it on the wall to enjoy every day, right?
Yeah.
I've had people approach me to buy high end work, the Warhols, the stuff like that. And I'm like, man, I ain't got that kind of money.
To be
First of
sitting in
all,
art.
truly blessed to, buy our house in March of 2018 for 4.8 million. That was almost 8 years ago, right? 7.5 years ago. Our house has gone up in value. Our house is now valued at about 10. So the equity is just, it's LA, it rises. So I have a portfolio that is incredibly diverse. We're invested in real estate. I'm finishing up
Yeah.
five new construction condos that I've been building for about 4 years now will be done and listed in about 3 weeks. And that's a $9 million project, right? They each go for about 1.8 million. So we're invested in software, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, REITs, storage facilities, perfume. We have invested in a company called Flowin, right? It's an iced coffee brand. That was really unique. For my birthday, we went to Bali last year, and that's where I
Love that.
published my book, Resilient: Achieving the American Dream. Russell Simmons invited us to his hotel in Bali. And so we performed breathing exercises and yoga and stretching and meditation every day for a week in his home. And it was amazing. While we were at breakfast one day, we overheard this girl named Tammy Tran. She was talking about this new business that she was doing. And as she walked by, I said, Tammy, hi, my name's Lenny. This is my wife, Teresa. Can you tell us more about your business? She goes, I'll send you a deck. Sent me the deck. And I was like, me and Teresa were looking at it, and then we seen her the next day and the next day, and we asked questions about her iced coffee company called Flowin, and she goes, "I can give you some samples." And I said, "All right, cool." So I was getting ready to publish. I mean, literally publish my book, which I created my own publishing company, Bazemore Publishing,
Yep.
to self publish. I was about to push the button. That was about, I don't know, maybe a paragraph or two away from, executing. I remembered, shit, I got to go get the samples for the iced coffee company. So I went over to Russell's house. They were having a little party. I took the samples back. She was like, you make sure you save some for Teresa. I was like, all right, I will. So on the way, she gave me like three or four of them. On the way, I popped one open and I drank it. I was like, oh, this tastes good. So I finished it. I get back to the villa and I was laying down on the bed doing my thing and I was like, oh, this burst of energy hit me. I was like, oh, I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is crazy. So I went down to the lower level where the pool was and I bam, 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 boom. And I published my book and it went out into the world. And I was just like filled with all this energy. Like I jumped in the pool. I was like, yeah, let's go. I said, Teresa's like, what's gotten into you? I said, oh, and iced coffee. So I said, Tammy, let's talk. So we ended up talking and we ended up putting $100,000 into as an investment into Flowin, the iced coffee company. So we have different vehicles that we invested in, which is a diversified portfolio. So I think that, when you achieve a certain level of wealth through knowledge, right? Which starts with self. Black folk need to understand financial literacy. They need to read Start Late, Finish Rich, right? It's an amazing book. It teaches you all you need to know and just start. You're never too
Got to do
old
it.
to start. And then when you start accumulating some financial freedom, that's what I like to call it because that equates to wealth, financial freedom. Another thing, it's a misconception to have $1 million to retire. You can retire comfortably with about $200,000. You just have to be mindful of your spending. I live my life based on percentages. If I have a certain net worth, then I have a certain percentage that I could buy. You know what I mean? For instance, my wife drives a Bentley convertible, 2020. We had enough reserves for us to pay $300,000 in cash for that car. I had ordered my car. I sold my 911 and my G Wagon, and I ordered my Bentley SUV, big speed. It's 300,000. At the time, our reserves were low, so I only put $100,000 down, and I financed it for 5 years. My payments are like 2,800 a month. I could have paid cash, but that would have left me low in case of an emergency. I like to keep a little bit of, access to a little bit of cash. I owe probably, it's a 2022. I probably owe like 70 grand on it, right? It didn't harm me because something happened where I got hit with an extra cost for building this real estate project. And I went into this sadness that was, I felt like, oh my God, like, I felt so sad. And I was sitting right over here, 5 feet away, crying my eyes out. I was so hurt. Teresa came out and said, baby, what's wrong? I said, this is going to be an extra 100 grand. I don't, where did I go wrong? Like, I didn't make a mistake, but I felt like I should have seen it coming. And I went to the bank. They said, we're not giving you any more money. I'm like, damn, like, she was like, oh, remember we have the reserve. We could just use that. I was like, oh, shit, yeah. But if I would have bought that Bentley, which would be out of my principal, right? Teresa and I have established we're going to use percentages to buy big ticket items. If I would have been like, yeah, I'm gonna go get this 300,000, pay 300,000, bam, wire the money, I would have been short with my real estate project. But because I made the decision to buy on percentages, I had the extra money. That problem went away like that. So I rely heavily on my wife for guidance, for emotional support and love, and baby, I'm proud of you, and that's all. Outside of the home, I literally am what I say I am and what I curate, right? Because life's not about finding yourself; it's about creating yourself. And I was determined to create the best version of who I am and be financially stable so that I can in turn be responsible. So in my hometown in Norristown, I think it was 2017, my wife Teresa and I donated $1 million to Habitat for Humanity to purchase 10 homes for people of color in my community just recently. And it will be implemented on Thursday in my hometown. We will feed 105 families groceries for a week because of this economic bull crap that we're in that was self-inflicted by an irresponsible president. You cannot do what he's doing in any capacity and not have negative reverberations go out into the world, not just our community, our state, our country, but the entire world. The man is irresponsible, and I don't know why people or how people could see him as a potential leader when he had a shot the first time and messed it up. And he's a destructive nature. He destroys things. He doesn't lift up. So when the Black community is suffering, well, all communities are suffering, but the Black community is suffering more because they don't give a damn about us. That's why we have to internally realize this and go for self. So self-preservation becomes that much more important. And when all this bullshit is over, we need to still have those self-preservation qualities. And we need to start with financial literacy. We need to be very mindful of where we spend our money. And then when you get the money, you have to be responsible to the community and uplift in ways that you determine. Don't let nobody call you up. Yo, I'm looking for some money for this, that, and the third. Nah, nah, nah. You and your partner, your wife, whoever it is, maybe it's just you determine how you want to give back.
I love how you kind of closing on where I wanted to go in terms of the power of relationships, in terms of forming them and protecting them. And how do you choose wisely? How do you make decisions? I love all that. I just let you go. I'm like, you hitting it right now. And it was interesting. My ex and I won't even bring that up. There is an idea of having to choose your partner and being truly in partnership. And I had a question around what advice do you give, successful women that are navigating success and love? And even what would you say to Black men in this time? Because there's a lot of like gender wars around happening right
Let me
now. I
start
know.
with Black women. Let me start with Black women. All
Okay, go
right.
ahead.
My wife is an amazing Black woman.
Teresa is amazing. Hi,
All right.
Teresa.
Black women need to understand. And I'm gonna Friday night, Tina Knowles invited me to her book signing. I was at the Wiltern on Wilshire Boulevard. So I go down there and it was a great event. And she said some things that were reality based. Women need to, if they're in a bad relationship, they need to find the courage to go. Right. I was a man in that audience and I'm listening to this prominent Black woman tell all the women in the audience, if you're in a bad relationship, you need to go, because that's what she wishes that she would have done sooner. And I said, that goes for men too, right? That goes for men too. It's always a two-way street. So when I talk about men, I'm talking about women. When I talk about women, I'm talking about men. So women need to understand this. You are looking for this type of man. This. You have a criteria. You have a criteria in which you're looking for this ideal man. The best way to find that man is to be what that man is looking for. Work on yourself to become the person that you attract. Do you want to attract him? Okay, you want that, you want that, you want that. That's all one-sided. He's got to want you. So what have you done to personally develop? Be the catch that you're trying to catch. So I'll leave that alone. What are your thoughts on that?
That's sticky because I'm single and I've done a lot of self work, and a lot of my girlfriends are a lot of my girlfriends are single. We are, educated, healthy, hitting the gym, eating well, drinking our water, living, bringing out, creating our own peace, to be honest. And sometimes I would say I don't believe that our counterparts are checking for us or are in the place to be able to step up to the plate. And, and
You couldn't be more right.
you talk about this idea of being who we want. It's interesting. We can be, to your point, who they want us to be. But the reality is we've had to become self-sufficient.
Yes.
And to be honest, we are now looking like how they look, which is self-sufficient, healthy. We look good. And they're not attracted. They don't care what we do for a living. But
So
at the
let's
same
let's
token, yeah. So yeah,
let's talk
go
let's talk
for it.
about that. Let's really talk about that. Self-sufficient, y'all built up to some degree forcibly, right? Because they wasn't living up to their job or their expectations, or y'all expectations. Men have really struggled with identity, and women have built themselves up so beautifully from a foundation of strength, dignity. I could do bad all by myself shit, right? You guys are the cornerstone of society. When I think of Black women, I think of mama. I think of my grandmother, right? I think of my friend, my partner, my associate, my everything. The problem is Black men have not done their part. They have not put in the work. You guys have. Black men need to understand toxic masculinity is toxic. It's poison. It stops you from living your best life. I'm macho. I'm macho. Listen, you could jump in any kind of whip you want. You could live wherever you want. You could buy all the gear you want. You could portray this bullshit, or you can just fundamentally sit back on a beach, listen to the waves crashing, and then say, damn, I have to look internally. How do I live my best authentic life? A man needs to work on balance. Toxic masculinity is poison. You can be masculine, but you're going to be leaning this way. It's best if a man works on his femininity. And if you can do that, swallow whatever pride you have to, or just really look in the mirror and say, what do I want to be? Who do I want to curate? What image do I want to be? I want to be this. I want to be that. That goes back to saying life's not about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. And all men need to work on balance. They need to be feminine and masculine and in the center. And sometimes they have to be more masculine than feminine or more feminine than masculine. They have to read the room. And in
Lenny, you just
order to
dropped the
do that,
gem. You just dropped the gem.
in order to
You
do
gotta go.
that, you gotta swallow that bullshit pride. Masculinity is a tool to use in society.
Not
Femininity is a
weaponize
tool to use in society.
and not weaponize it. And I think,
Yes.
it's interesting. You said a lot there, and there's gonna be a really amazing quote with my face being like, oh, you gotta create the person that you wanna be. And I think you go back to like just even going 360 where we started, like, men, women, because we want to be in partnership. We don't want to do this alone. At least I know as a woman, I don't want to do this alone. I am a helpmate. I want to grow pies and, I want to multiply. And it is, what does success look like? What makes you happy and what does success look like? And like, what are you doing to get to that? It can't be you womanizing, and not to say that there are a lot of black bad men or, that this is a black man issue. Like, I'm not trying to have that war, but I do want to say that you and Teresa have created a model, and,
Thank you.
you guys have, right? Like, and would say like that does not look traditional, but you guys came together and built something beautiful. And so what, my question originally was, what is your advice to women navigating success and love? What is your advice for men that are trying to, black men specifically, that are trying to rise to the occasion? And I mean, you articulated and said a lot there, and it's around like this masculinity and really trying to be the person you want to be, work towards that. And I think that there's a lot there. And so I actually feel like the mantra, that framework where you started with, is the answer to some of that.
All right, check this out. My job every day, my number one job every day is to wake up and work on my happiness. Teresa's job every day is to wake up and work on her individual happiness. My job is not to wake up and try to make my wife happy. That's her job. My number one job above everything is to wake up and try not to make her unhappy. That's it. That's it. My wife and I, we met in the end of 2006, beginning of 2007. I worked in a gym at the time. I finished for the day. I went home. I decided to ride my bike back to the gym to work out. Housekeeping staff came up to me while I was working out and said, "Hey, there's a lady here who's interested on, a gym membership." I said, nah, I'm working out. I'm not working, not on the clock. But she seems like a nice lady, and I like nice ladies. So I went. "Hey, how you doing?" "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "I'll walk you around real quick. I'm not really working, but She goes, "I can see you're sweating." So we walk the gym and we get over to the glute machine. You push your leg back and you've got to pause and tighten the glute. I said, "I'm gonna show you this machine, but don't look at my butt." And so she looked at my butt. I was like, "What you doing? Like, come on." So we went into my office and I pitched her the gym membership. She goes, "Well, I like the gym. I'm going to go to another gym." I said, "What gym is that?" She goes, "The Bellevue." I said, "Oh, damn, I ain't gonna see you again. I would join there if I could afford it." She goes, "Ha ha ha." I said, "Well, let me get your number. Since you just moved to Philly," it was her sixth day in Philly. And, I said, "You don't know anyone, so you'll have my number in case of an emergency. And I'll reach out to you in a couple of days to see if you want to join this gym." So I reached out to her and she joined the gym. And I was like, I was hoping I could see you around the gym. You're kind of fun. We laughed when we were with each other. It was easy. And so I said, "You know what? Let's just keep talking. We became friends. I was dating someone at the time, and so was she, but she was interesting and she was adorable, right? So I was like, she seems like a nice person to be friends with. So literally 6 months of solid friendship. I take her to the pool hall. We go to the movies. We go to the symphony. We go to, bowling. I take her out, to Atlantic City, get drunk, and went to the Mary J. Blige concert, and all kinds of stuff. We had so much fun together. It was just a good friend. Then one day, a friend of mine asked me to come down to Cherry Hill because he was going to be away for a couple of days. I had a couple of days off. He was like, "Yeah, my kids from another relationship's coming. It's going to be madhouse, madhouse. You got to come down and help my wife and my other two kids like control the environment." I said, "All right, cool." So I went down. I was a babysitter for 2 days, and I woke up from a nap. It was a Wednesday, like 2 o'clock. I woke up and I could not stop thinking about Teresa. And I said, damn, this is crazy. So I called her. I was like, yo, what's up? How you doing? She's like, hey. I said, listen, I can't stop thinking about you. This is crazy. She goes, I can't stop thinking about you either. I said, all right, all right, all right. She was in corporate housing, cute little apartment. I said, how about if I come over to that apartment and you make one of those cute little salads that you make? And one of our things, we would open up wines from around the world and we would critique them and talk about them and stuff like that. So I was like, open up one of those bottles and we'll have the cute little salads and then we'll kiss. And if there's a spark, we'll discuss it. So she was like, oh, that sounds nice. So I went over, had the salad, had the wine, and we kissed. And there was a spark. And so we did what adults do, you know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? So then afterwards we made another glass of wine and we sat down on the couch and we discussed all night long. We discussed what we want and how we wanted to get it. And the number 5 million, we almost said it at the same time. We both wanted our net worth to be 5 million. So we, okay, let's take this slow. So we took it slow for 3.5 years before we got married. And so we've been together for 19 years. July 10th will be our 15th anniversary. Every step along the way together, everything, every move, every thought, everything was to get us to a $5 million net worth together. In 2013, 14, we became millionaires together. I was on the couch. She came home. She opened the door. Before I even had a chance to say, hey, babe, she was like, babe, you never guess what happened. I was like, what? We became millionaires today. It was like, what? This is crazy. Yo, that's crazy. You know, so um, it took us about 7 years after our friendship to become millionaires together. And so what's important is you have to identify, the right partner. And how you do that, it's different with everybody. People are searching for this, that, and the third. But first, whatever they're searching for, they need to make sure that the gaps in themselves are filled. Because as they're searching, so is someone else. Someone else is searching. That's why I said that women, and when I talk about women, I'm talking about men, they have to fulfill all the voids in themselves before they can go find someone who hopefully had done the work too, right? Because you can be a healed person through past trauma and connect with somebody, build a relationship with somebody. It's hard enough. It's hard enough to deal with a healed person. But if you're looking for somebody and you're just going to sacrifice, well, he ain't got this, and you just, you're trying to make him into what you want. He's not healed, and it's hard enough to deal with a healed person. So it's almost impossible to have a lasting relationship dealing with an unhealed person. So Teresa, through the grace of God, she was patient with me because I was an unhealed person, but I had a good heart. And she knew that I had a good heart. And with me being all, like, baby, look, let me tell you something. I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I know I'm unhealed, but I'd be willing to heal myself and look for opportunities to get healed as we go forward. And if you are patient with me, if you give me the time, eventually you'll have the husband that you help create, right? So women and men need to be patient with the person that they engage with. And as long as that person is willing to move forward, helping themselves with the help of their partner in healing. And this is why I often talk about, in my book, I talk about trauma, right?
Yeah.
It's best to just go to therapy, man. Fight through it. Because at the end of it, it's not about fixing you. It's about healing you. And like I said, it's hard enough to be with a person who's healed. Why would you just be with a person who's unhealed? It's just you're setting yourself up for disaster.
That was beautiful. And I think we can close on this note. For folks, I think for your book, it's titled Resilient.
Resilient, achieving the American dream.
Yeah. So I think there's two things. I'd love for you to talk about your book. For folks that are looking for a home in LA, I know that there was a lot of tragedy that happened. This is the first of many compounds that you will probably be building. Tell folks where they can tap in, tell them about the book, tell them where they can learn more about what you're doing in LA. Your next investment property, because I know it's probably in the back of your head, and you're like, as soon as this gets sold, I'm done with this. I'm on to the next. Listen, I already know. So
All
tell
right, hold
them
on, hold on, hold on,
closing
girlfriend.
words.
Hold on.
Go for it.
My book is called Resilient, Achieving the American Dream. You can Google it. It's on Amazon. Audiobook is highly recommended. You can hear the emotions, especially when I talk about my grandma. You can reach me at lennybazemore.com. On there, you'll see that I am a Jay Shetty certified life coach. I am a real estate developer here in LA. My career has been realtor, transition to investor, ultimately becoming a developer, finishing up a 9 million, 5 unit condo. Each condo is 1,500 square feet, starting at 1.8 million, solar powered, 3 bedrooms, 3 levels, subterranean parking for 2 spots for each unit. That project is an amazing project. Those buildings will be there long after I'm gone. I will continue to do real estate, but not at that level. I'll do gut renovations lasting no more than 8 to 12 months in and out. Because this project has challenged me beyond anything that I've ever experienced, I'm looking to pivot now. Instead of putting $2.5, $3 million up for a project, building the project, waiting to get my money back in 3, 4 years, I'm making a pivot. The pivot is after this project, after my pool is done, after a couple of other projects, I have an e-commerce business called sweetjasmines.com. It's a e-commerce pet store where we'll offer one daily vitamin treat for dogs. I have a couple of other projects. Just last night, I finished an amazing project during COVID. Let me first tell you, after this project, real estate project is done, I'm going to transition to becoming a writer, producer in Hollywood. I have a couple of projects that have been tossed my way already, so I know I'll be successful. But last night, we finished a project that means the world to me. And I'll start with this. Back in COVID, just like everybody else, I was in my house, had all the time in the world. I went up to my rooftop deck and I was like, I bet you I could write a song that uplifts people, right? Something fun, something creative. And I love country music. And I was like, let me see if I could write a country song. And that song is based on a guy in this small town whose father owns this ranch. And he's going to take over the ranch one day. And all the cute girls in town love him, but he don't give them the time of day. He's just trying to create himself. So his father sends him to college. And all of a sudden, he meets all these new and interesting girls from all over the place. He graduates, comes back to the town, takes over the ranch, and all the girls are trying to get him because he's a catch. And he's like, no, let's focus on his family business. And this new girl moves to town. Well, this new girl befriends some of the girls in town that like him, and he met her while he was out dancing with the fellas and drinking, and they fell madly in love, and she's different. And so the girlfriends are talking behind, their backs, his back, and spreading lies, and he thinks he's better than everybody. He ain't never, give us a chance. He thinks he's better than everybody. He ain't worth it. This spreading all these bullshit lies. And so they had moved in together. They love each other and he loves her, but the secrets and the lies are starting to cause some issues in their relationship. And my song is based on what he says to her one morning when he's had enough. And now let me tell you something, girl. You want to hear a sample?
Yeah, why not?
I wrote it 4 years ago and we finished it last night.
Wow. All right, let's listen to it.
All
And
right.
maybe I will make sure I put the link to it by the time we post this in the show notes.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right. I'm going to give you a little sample.
Go for it.
And I'm not a singer, right? I'm not a singer
No,
and it's rough.
we listen and we don't judge.
So we're going to put this song out into the world. So, baby girl, good morning. Would you like some breakfast? Go ahead in the kitchen. I set a place for you. Something I gotta tell you, and I pray that you'll listen. Baby girl, I love you. And you love me. But it's a conspiracy theory. The way your friends talking about me. It's a conspiracy theory. The way they spread them lies. Girl, there ain't no way around it. My heart is...
That is dope. And on that note, Lenny, congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your journey with us. We've talked about a lot and I really appreciate it. And I just want to say peace. Peace to you,
Peace.
to Teresa, and
Thank
everything
you.
that you're creating. May it continue to multiply. I'm so happy. I'm cheering you on. And just thank you again for spending time with the Bebop fam.
May God bless you forever.
I receive that.
All right, bye.